Government has confirmed that President Cyril Ramaphosa won't attend the United Nations Annual General Assembly debate in New York later this month. Why? Let's get some answers. Let me bring in Khusela Diko, spokesperson to the President. Khusela, thank you very much indeed for coming through. Why is the President not going to the UN?
Good morning, Blaine. Thank you so much for having us on the show. The President is of the view that while the United Nations General Assembly is very important and would be dealing with critical matters, amongst them financing for development, climate change, and so forth, he believes that it's important for him to stay in the country and deal with and concentrate on critical issues that are of concern. He's going to be attending to the implementation of, amongst others, the government's urgent measures on gender-based violence, also working with the security cluster on restoration of law, order and stability in these areas that have been affected by public violence. But also, as you know, the President has put economic growth at the center of this administration, so really overseeing initiatives to turn around the economy. This is work that government does on a regular basis, but the President felt that it's important that it's accelerated and more attention is given to it over the next coming days and weeks. So what he'll be...
Yeah. There's also this high-level climate change summit, I understand, that's taking place. He's going to miss that as well?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
I understand that there's also this high-level climate change summit that's taking place. Is he going to miss that as well?
The President has delegated the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, to lead the South African delegation to the United Nations. So all of those meetings that he would have had on the sideline, as well as I think South Africa's participation in the UN General Assembly will be led by the Minister of International Relations. I just wanted to make the point, Blaine, that this does not mean that he is not going to be on a world stage. Minister of International Relations is well capable to handle those issues, and she will be sending to the world the message of South Africa and obviously explaining some of the challenges that have resulted in President Ramaphosa having to remain at home to concentrate on these critical issues. It's also expected that over the next few days and weeks, together with the governing party, the African National Congress, they will be meeting communities, civil society, structures of government, the security cluster. You were just listening now at the results of the crime statistics. So those are issues of primary concern to the President, and that's why he's decided not to participate in ONGA this year.
Yeah. Has the President been briefed with regards to the recent statistics?
He has been in constant communication with the security cluster and would obviously be aware of the crime statistics as they are presented. What they have not yet done is to sit down as the security cluster and I think cabinet to discuss the way forward in terms of those statistics. And those are some of the urgent meetings that he has requested that they are convened in the coming few days.
Khusela, what's his initial reaction? I mean, it paints a stark picture, isn't it? A depressing picture, not a pretty picture in terms of sexual offences is up, murder is up, attempted murder is up, assault with GBH, grievous bodily harm, up. I mean, we're talking about when you're dealing with children, murder of children is up, sexual offences involving children has also increased. What's the President's thinking with regards to this?
It's extremely concerning, and I think that there is nobody in South Africa who is not aware of how serious a problem of crime we have in this country. That is why the President has called for urgent implementation. For example, when we speak about the sexual offences, the gender-related offences, he has called for the urgent implementation of the resolutions of the Presidential Summit on Gender-Based Violence that we had held last year. We're also talking about the increase, for example, of our sexual offences courts to ensure that we're able to prosecute a lot of these offenders a lot quickly, but also to look at the resources that the police services have at their disposal. We remember not so long ago there had been a deployment of the military in the Western Cape province. Now that particular deployment is supposed to come to an end at the end of this week, I believe it is. So they will be assessing the impact of that particular intervention and obviously any actions to be taken in that regard moving forward.
Look, we're dealing with the topic of gender-based violence, and you would agree that the temperature of views on the ground is so high. People are angry and they're tired in terms of, they want to see action now. We had this presidential summit on gender-based violence last year. Has there been any progress? What sort of resolutions were taken then, and anything acted upon at this stage?
There's been some progress that has been made. Firstly, there was that establishment of that steering committee, which composes government as well as civil society. A lot of the women who would have been part of the civil society movements, including Total Shutdown and a number of other organizations, form part of the steering committee. Now, they've established a rapid response mechanism, which to date has been able to assist in a number of cases. Without going into the details of some of them, but they've assisted in resolutions of issues around sexual harassment, but also reaching out to victims of gender-based violence. There's also work that has been done looking at strengthening the emergency teams in our provinces, bringing together the police, social development, health, justice, and education, so that they're able to provide comprehensive forms of responses to gender-based violence. You'll remember, Blaine, not so long ago, we were also, the president was opening one of the courts in Boysens, one of these sexual offences courts, which are, as we were saying, to improve the conviction rates, but also to provide appropriate services to ensure that victims are not subjected to secondary trauma. But at the core of it is that you need society, all of society, to come together, to deal with this scourge, because these people who perpetrate these acts of violence, they're people who are in our communities, in our families, in our churches. So the president has made a call across society that let's together look at ways where we can further support and strengthen the interventions that we're able to make, perhaps from a law enforcement and a prosecution point of view, but ensuring that you look at, the education of the boy child. How do we socialize our children to understand that this normalization of violence in society is absolutely intolerable? So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, Blaine. The president spoke to it when he was addressing the nation, but it really requires all of us to work together to achieve.
No one will disagree with you there, Khusela. I really think it needs to be a holistic approach, civil society, government working hand in hand, and it needs to start at home. That's where, how we raise the boy child, as you've alluded to, is very, very important. Something that might help as well is this National Register of Offenders, which lists men who are convicted of assault against women and children. The president did make an undertaking to take this to Parliament in order to ask for it to be made public. When?
It is work in progress. We expect that, I'm sure within the week, the president would have written to the speaker about this. It has been discussed at the level of cabinet as well as the JCPS cluster. I think the primary concern there is an issue that has been raised by some non-governmental organizations who would say making this public could potentially lead to some element of vigilantism where, people want to take the law into their own hands. And those are some of the risks, I suppose, that we would have to consider, or Parliament would have to consider, as we look at making that particular register public. But one of the things that the president has been driving also, Blaine, is this reviewing of all gender-based violence cases. There are instances where it is said that our police services perhaps did not act with the necessary due diligence on some of these cases, or a case just simply goes cold. And he's calling that all of these must be properly investigated, because what you do not want is a situation where some of these people are walking amongst us, they continue to be free, whereas, with the proper attention given to those cases, some of those could have been resolved. I think the last thing I want to mention is just infrastructural issues. So, just ensuring that we're able to fast track how our forensic services work to get those DNA tests on time, make sure that those rape kits are there. While we've created, the relatively safe spaces for victims to report gender-based violence, more needs to be done to ensure that we are able to win those cases in court. It's one thing to say that the offenders should not get bail, and the state has committed to oppose bail in all of those cases. But what we need to ensure is that we're able to win those cases. The harshest possible minimum sentences are applied. And as the President was saying, a life sentence then must indeed mean a life sentence.
Yeah, important point indeed. Ms. Diko, as always, a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for coming through. That was Khusela Diko, is the spokesperson for the President.